This story is about Clara's relationship, where her partner was diagnosed with narcissism after their relationship was on the rocks. This is her heartbreaking story. You never really know when it starts, when that moment is, the moment you lose yourself. I thought I knew who I was. I thought I knew what love was. But when I met him, everything changed. He was charming, captivating, the kind of person who lights up a room, who makes you feel seen. He had this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the world. I thought I found my forever, my soulmate. But then, the cracks began to show. At first, they were small, tiny fractures I chose to ignore. He didn't come home one night. No calls, no texts, just silence. I was worried, terrified even. I called him over and over, but no response. My mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios. But when he finally walked through that door, there wasn't a hint of remorse on his face. He looked at me like I was the one who had done something wrong. Where were you? Why didn't you answer my calls? I don't have to explain myself to you. That was the first time I felt it. That chill in the air, the realization that something was very, very wrong. But I didn't leave. I couldn't. I thought if I just loved him enough, he would change, that things would get better. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. And then the cheating started. He didn't even try to hide it. I would find lipstick on his collar, texts on his phone. And when I confronted him, he'd laugh. "You're being crazy, Clara. You're always so paranoid." He made me feel like I was losing my mind, like I was the problem. He twisted everything, turned it all around on me. I became a shadow of myself. I stopped seeing friends, stopped going out. My world shrunk to the size of our apartment, to the confines of his approval. And yet, nothing was ever enough. He would disappear for days, leaving me in silence, drowning in the void he left behind. But there was something more, something I didn't see. Not then. I gave everything, every piece of myself. And he took it all, and then some. His silence was a weapon, his absence a punishment. I was trapped in a cycle of his making, dancing to the tune of his disapproval. Then I found it, the journal. I started writing in it after one of our fights, trying to make sense of it all. And there, in my own words, I saw it clearly for the first time. He was a narcissist. He didn't love me. He loved the control, the power, the way he could make me feel so small, so dependent on him for everything. I was his puppet, and he held all the strings. And just when I thought I had figured it all out, when I thought I could finally break free, something happened. Something I never saw coming. Certainly. Let's continue the story from that point, building on the suspense and depth of Clara's experience. Just when I thought I had figured it all out, when I thought I could finally break free, something happened. Something I never saw coming. It was a message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, or maybe even another one of his mind games. But there was something about the way the words were written, something desperate. Part of me knew I should ignore it. I should block the number and forget about it. But another part of me, a part I didn't even know was still alive, felt hope. What if this was a way out? What if this person knew something that could help me? I almost left. My heart was pounding, my mind racing with all the reasons this could be a terrible idea. But then she walked in. "You must be Clara. And you're..." "I'm Rachel. I used to be with him too." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She knew. She knew what I was going through, because she had been there herself. He has a pattern. He finds someone who's vulnerable, who's kind, who he thinks he can mold. And then he breaks them down, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. It was like hearing my own story, my own pain, but from someone else's lips. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't just me. How did you get out? It wasn't easy. I had to disappear, to cut off everything. Friends, family, my whole life. And even then, I still feel him watching me, waiting for the moment I'm vulnerable again. Rachel gave me her number, told me to call if I ever needed to talk. As she left, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear for what I had yet to face, but also hope, because now I knew I wasn't alone. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to leave, to get away from him, from the lies, the manipulation, the control. But just as I started to make a plan, something else happened. Something that changed everything. What was that? You thought you could just leave? How did he know? How did he always know? You think you're the first to try? You think you're special, Clara? I could feel the walls closing in, his shadow engulfing me. I needed to get out. I needed to escape. But there was nowhere to go, no one to turn to. What are you going to do with that, Clara? You think you can fight me? I sat alone in the dimly lit room, my thoughts spiraling as I listened to the sound of the door slamming shut behind him. He had left again, just like he always did when things didn't go his way. Normally, I'd spend the night waiting anxiously for him to return, but this time, I didn't. Something felt different. Something inside me had shifted. Rachel's words echoed in my mind, clear and strong, as though she was right beside me. He won't change. You have to save yourself before he destroys every part of who you are. It had been months since I first met Rachel. At the time, I didn't think anyone else could understand what I was going through. But when she shared her story of being trapped in a narcissistic relationship, something clicked. Her story was my story, down to the smallest details. The constant manipulation, the gaslighting, the way I was made to feel like I was the one at fault, like I was crazy. Hearing Rachel's journey made me realize I wasn't alone, that I wasn't crazy, and that I deserved more. But knowing I deserved better wasn't enough to make me leave. I was still so scared. Scared of what would happen if I left. Scared of being alone. Scared that I wouldn't have the strength to rebuild my life. That fear had kept me tethered to him for so long, hoping things would get better, believing his lies when he promised they would. But tonight was different. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep waking up every morning feeling like a shell of who I used to be. I couldn't remember the last time I felt joy or even peace. I had lost myself somewhere in the mess of this relationship, and I was terrified that if I didn't leave now, I might never find my way back. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone and dialed Rachel's number. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her to pick up. "Rachel," I whispered when she answered. "I'm here," she said. "What's going on? I can't do this anymore. I need to leave, but I'm so scared." Tears filled my eyes, but for the first time, they didn't feel like tears of hopelessness. They felt like the release of something I'd been holding on to for too long. "You're ready," Rachel said. "I'm so proud of you for making this decision. You don't have to do this alone. I'm coming to get you." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Just hearing her say those words gave me a small sense of relief. I wasn't alone. I didn't have to be. As I waited for her, I began packing a small bag. I didn't need much, just the essentials. My hands shook as I placed the few items in the bag, but with each item, the weight on my chest lifted a little. I wasn't just packing a bag. I was preparing to take my life back. When Rachel arrived, I felt a rush of emotion, fear, relief, hope, all tangled together. I climbed into her car and stared out the window as we drove away from the apartment I had once thought of as home. I couldn't believe I was actually doing it. After all the years of doubt, of feeling trapped, I was leaving. We didn't talk much during the drive. Rachel didn't need to fill the silence with words of comfort. Her presence was enough. I wasn't sure what the future held for me, but for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about myself, about what I needed, about the life I could rebuild. When we reached Rachel's place, I let out a shaky breath. The fear was still there, but so was something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. "You did it," Rachel said. "You're free." I nodded, tears filling my eyes again. It didn't feel real yet. I still felt raw, fragile, but I knew that I had taken the hardest step. I had left. With Rachel's help, I had found the strength to walk away. And now, little by little, I would rebuild myself. Each day, I'd breathe a little more freely, until one day, I would look back at this moment, not as the end of something painful, but as the beginning of something new, something that belonged to me. I was finally free.